seems the time of reckoning has really arrived. I wonder what all those fans in different comment sections are thinking right now. What do you expect from a company? They need to make profit. Of course, they're gonna charge you for content, sure. But if capitalism tactics are justifiable in your book, how much are you willing to bend your bias? What are you going to defend once a shady deal appears? Once the innocent company that just wanted to cash their return on investment sells out to questionable figures? Well, from my research, it appears the news is stirring some backlash already, at least within the Sims community, which is obviously what we focus on here at the Drama House. In this video, we will talk about the latest news of a very controversial acquisition, what this move means from EA's perspective, and how the backlash the company is publicly receiving is a well-received guest, yet one that is very late to the party, I'm afraid. Thank you for meeting me here today, my drama friend. My name is Lady Drama and I will be your narrator today. You know, the reason why this channel is called Drama House is because we're supposed to focus on Sims drama, gameplay drama, made up things. But many times we have to take a moment to talk about the current state of the franchise because as a long-time player, I feel I have to use this platform and speak up. However, I feel today's video might be more charged with real-world stuff than usual. So I just want to issue a warning here and tell you in advance about some topics that might make you feel uncomfortable or that you might not have the energy to think about right now. And if that's the case, I completely understand if you want to save this video for another day. We all need to take care of ourselves. But in order to discuss these recent events, I need to give you some context here. As reported by the Wall Street Journal on September 26, a lot of changes were rumored to be happening at EA. Not only was the public company seeking to go private, but it also appeared to be in talks with suspicious entities, to put it mildly. The acquisition was confirmed, as I predicted when I started researching for this video, on Monday 29th. And I mean, it didn't come as a shocker, since I thought it was illogical for the Wall Street Journal to report on such a colossal deal if it hadn't almost gone through. According to CNBC, the deal is expected to close officially in the first quarter of fiscal 2027. Now, before we dive into the different players in this deal, and please do not go anywhere because we need to talk about this, I just want to say that when a company that has been public since 1990, and I'm not gonna say how long ago that is, but you can do the math, honey, because this whole deal debacle is depressing enough, okay? But yes, when a company that has been public for such a long time decides to go private, that is something worth talking about, especially when a public company goes private thanks to a leveraged buyout ranked as the biggest of all time. Let's break this down for a second, baby, because I feel it's worth clarifying what the deal means and what it does before we add the cherry on top of the cake, which is, in my opinion, who is on the other side of the negotiation table facing EA and offering $50 billion. First off, as we mentioned, EA was a public company for decades. Being public means you and I, or anyone with a brokerage account, could technically buy a tiny piece of it in the form of a stock. A public company must answer to its shareholders, file financial reports, and generally be, more transparent. Now, with this deal, EA is about to go private again. What does that mean? Well, it means no more public trading of shares, no more small investors. Instead, the company is owned by a much smaller group of very wealthy investors or, private equity firms. They don't have to be as transparent, and decisions about the company's future can be made behind closed doors. And here's the kicker, babe. This is happening through something called a leveraged buyout. At its most basic, it just means a group of investors is buying EA using a lot of borrowed money. Instead of paying mostly out of their own pockets, they take out loans, and the company being bought, in this case EA, ends up being responsible for paying the debt back. On paper, that's not necessarily unusual. Leveraged buyouts have been used for decades as a way to buy really big companies without the buyers needing to have mountains of cash sitting around. But here's why these deals can be kind of problematic. When a company suddenly has billions of new debt strapped onto its back, it changes everything. Private equity firms often focus less on the long-term health of the company and more on squeezing out quick profits by cutting costs, selling off valuable parts, or raising prices, while the company itself is stuck with huge interest payments. So instead of EA investing in new games, new studios, or more ambitious projects, a big chunk of its resources could now just be going to service that. And that's why people look at leveraged buyouts as less of a rescue plan and more like strapping a ball and chain to a company and then looting whatever's left. Now, of course, honey, we are no genie in the bottle, and so we have to sit tight and see how this actually plays out. In my opinion, there are two ways this could go. On the optimistic side, being private again could give EA some breathing room. Without the constant pressure of quarterly earnings reports and Wall Street screaming profits, 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 the company might have more freedom to take risks and invest in the long-term health of its games and studios. But on the flip side, honey, these new investors clearly didn't put all this money, $50 billion, on the table out of pure love for video games. If their focus is on extracting as much money as possible, we could see EA get carved up with studios shut down, projects canceled, and the whole company weighed down by debt repayments. So, yeah, it's either a chance for EA to reinvent itself away from shareholder pressure or the start of a slow, debt-fueled march into being gutted for parts. I guess time will tell. As I mentioned at the beginning, this news is creating some backlash from fans, as I've noticed many users already storming the Sims 4 Instagram account to express disappointment with what's happening. And this part doesn't necessarily stem from the nature of the deal and the leveraged buyout. This is because of who is offering to buy EA for 50 billion. Actually, little editor note here. I'm just checking right now and it's 55 billion. So, wow. But please follow me to the meeting room and let's talk about the players in this deal. At one side of the table, we had the seller, where EA's board and current shareholders sit with regulators and oversight bodies to decide whether to sell, negotiate terms, push protections, and authorize the deal. On the other side, we had the buyer. We have the Saudi Arabia Investment Fund, the tech investment firm Silver Lake, and the company Affinity Partner. They were the ones putting up or sourcing money to take EA private, hoping to gain if EA becomes more profitable or if they can extract value from it. But we must consider another group of entities with financial interest or hidden leverage as well. JP Morgan, for example, which plays a pivotal role. How they structure the debt, interest rates, covenants, terms will heavily shape how risky this deal becomes for EA. Then you have affinity partners that can also act as a middleman, bridging capital sources, for example, Middle Eastern investors and sovereign funds. We're about to discuss this topic, so stay with me. But yeah, bridging capital sources to the acquisition itself. Their incentives may align with maximizing returns, and sometimes that could be through non-obvious paths. The Saudi Arabia Investment Fund may also be considered to have some hidden leverage, as it has an existing stake and influence, making it both an investor and I guess consolidator of influence. Now, here we are. Out of these groups, there are some relevant keywords which represent the core reason for fans and rightful, in my opinion, public outrage. The Saudi Arabia Investment Fund and Jared Kushner. Let's see why. First of all, the Saudi Arabia Investment Fund is what you may have assumed it was, a sovereign wealth fund tied to the Saudi government. Because of this, its involvement raises questions about state influence over media, cultural content, and data. Plus, given its existing stake, there's concern that this is less new money and more a consolidation of already growing influence. And no, it's not like this entity woke up yesterday and thought about purchasing EA. And this is why I mentioned at the beginning of the video how the current outrage for the deal from fans is positive, but might have arrived a little too late. The Saudi Arabia Investment Fund became one of the largest Nintendo shareholders with 5.01% ownership in 2022. In early 2025, Pokemon Go developer Niantic also announced that it had sold its library of games to mobile games maker Scopely, which is controlled by Savvy Games and the Saudi Arabia Investment Fund. Ubisoft also had a deal with the investment fund, which granted them some backlash after announcing Assassin's Creed Mirage DLC to be set in Saudi Arabia. It's reported that even Ubisoft employees raised concerns about a partnership with the controversial entity. But okay, apart from being a government-tied fund who's suspiciously acquiring a big portfolio of names from the video game industry, what's wrong with this connection exactly? Saudi Arabia's public investment fund has been implicated in several human rights issues, both domestically in Saudi Arabia and through its international portfolio. According to Human Rights Watch, the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, owner of the $1 trillion Saudi fund, has been responsible for overseeing the murder of journalists, the use of migrant slaves, and the forceful eviction and genocide of native tribes, the oppression of women and female activists, and the imprisonment and execution of LGBTQ+ people in Saudi Arabia. Human Rights Watch has linked the investment fund and the Crown Prince to several political assassinations and the continuation of the war against Yemen and the of civilian populations. In my opinion, this whole blood-stained resume should be more than enough to unleash immediate outrage on the decision to connect with the entity for whatever amount of money we're talking about. But let's brace ourselves, because who could fit the seat next to human rights deniers if not a Trump family member? Affinity Partners, the large-scale investments and partnerships firm, is led by the son-in-law of US President Donald Trump, Jared Kushner. Now, apart from looking like a total schmagaggy, Kushner's portfolio of life memories and connections is pretty concerning too. Kushner's father, Charles Kushner, was convicted of tax evasion, witness tampering, and illegal campaign donation in the early 2000s. He even tried to entrap his own brother-in-law with a prostitute and a videotape. So I guess good genes truly run in the family. Because Jared, Ivanka Trump's husband, held a massive influence over US policy during his time as a senior advisor in the Trump White House, he was able to leverage his deals, especially in the Middle East, while his family's real estate business was seeking foreign investment. That overlap obviously raised huge red flags about conflicts of interest. And guess what? After leaving government, Kushner's firm Affinity Partners quickly secured billions from Saudi Arabia's fund and other Gulf states. As a result of this, many critics argue that this looks like payback for the policies he advanced while in office. And cherry on top of the cake, Jared's firm, Affinity Partners, is notorious for being vague about what it actually invests in and how it plans to deliver returns, raising eyebrows about whether it's more about influence and relationships than sound business. This is exactly how a conversation about a video game legendary name like Electronic Arts shifts to a business conversation, which inevitably transforms into a political and social debate. Personally, I can't see any other way to look at this deal, and I feel it's very reductive of the situation for people to just put a sticker on it that says it's just business, because business is never just business. There are layers and nuances, and as consumers, I believe we should all keep this in mind when we decide where to put the little money we worked so hard for. To be honest, I was positively surprised to see the backlash online about this news, and that's why I also wanted to cover the story. I just hope that the depth of it doesn't get lost in this discussion, because we should all condemn the acts backed by EA's new main investors, but we should also be aware that the same entity we condemned when we hear about this groundbreaking deal is the same that has already started infiltrating into the industry, forging deals with other household names way before approaching EA. And they're now doing this hand in hand with another entity that has been allegedly utilizing political influence to introduce itself into massive deals with sovereign wealth funds. But also, if you thought EA was better than this, you might have overestimated them. Voices like myself and other creators in the Sims community have been unveiling the poor management of the franchise by EA for a long time, and from my perspective, this is not shocking, not surprising, but the disappointment will always be there. When I was a child, I would stare at the EA logo in awe, even dreaming of one day be able to, who knows, work there, tour the offices, explore the Willy Wonka factory of my dreams. So while I do understand why some fans feel inclined to defend the company's decisions about the Sims franchise, the reason being they really love the franchise, and that's perfectly understandable, I also think the time has definitely come to take a break. Look, the deal might potentially give EA more control and less pressure about their creative direction, and that would be refreshing. But it could also mean many other outcomes: a corruption of the way of working, a radical change in strategies that focus on short-term revenue, things like over monetization of creative and entertainment projects. It could mean more time and resources to come up with a franchise sequel, but it could also mean a series of underwhelming new projects. I cannot tell what the future holds for EA and the Sims franchise, but every big change clearly means a plan to restructure whatever you're trying to modify. And just like any other changes, the impact on the Sims franchise might take several unexpected turns. That's true. But one thing that may be different than before is the fact that supporters of the franchise might not behave in the way EA expects them to. I believe that this is a great time to consider boycotting the product. It might be hard, it might sound unfair, but considering nothing that comes out of the current Sims factory is even remotely good enough, it's the ultimate sign from the community that it's time to be truly accountable. Even if EA becomes a private company, allowed to offer way less transparency and way less accountability, we should all demand this with our pockets. In fact, it has never been clearer how the real game changer in EA's universe is money. My dear drama friend, thank you so much for making it to the end. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and watch this video. If you're into or ever been into The Sims or other EA properties, I think you should be aware this is happening. As always, let me know what you think in the comment section and let's keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. My name is Lady Drama and I hope I'll see you very soon.